Well, hello, Nativity Bible Heads. It is Dr. Wayne, and it is time for Sunday morning Power Bible Study. We are now in the lessons assigned for the third Sunday in Lent. We get our reading from Exodus chapter 20, and then Psalm 19, and then our first lesson, or for our second lesson, the one from the epistle, is 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and then our gospel reading comes from John. Yeah. So let's get to it. Exodus 20. Now, we have been in a series of first lessons which highlight the major covenants that we find in the Hebrew Bible. These are those covenants that the Old Testament build up as a thing that God did with his people. And each time there was something else, like there's first one was with Adam. We didn't really talk about that one, but Noah, yeah, Abraham, yeah. This week, Moses. Now, we don't get the mechanics of covenant. All we get in our reading today is just the Ten Commandments, okay? And we know that there was a Mosaic covenant. There was a covenant that was established with Moses on behalf of the people that, hey, God, the way covenant works is God says, I will be your God. But I gotta, in the Abraham thing, he didn't require anything from Noah. God didn't. With Abraham, he did require something. He required a sign of circumcision, right? Here, there is a promise. The promise is God's going to give them the promised land, and there is a condition. The condition is, but you got to be good people. You got to be the kind of people that are worthy of settling a land. You got to be there's a decency of human being that you have to illustrate in order to maintain this gift. Because if it's kind of like that. The decline and fall of the Roman Empire, right? One of the reasons why it couldn't continue is because it just was so corrupt. It was just could not continue. There are stipulations in God's deal with Israel through Moses that there's some certain things you can blow this thing. It's like it's as though God is saying, now, this is a great promise. It might sound like a great deal for you, but here's what you want to know. You can blow it. You could actually blow it by not following some very simple rules. What are they? Well, then God spoke all these words. We don't get the context before it or the context after it, but I know we're used to hearing these words as though God were speaking directly to Moses, because that's the way we have it depicted in that movie, the Ten Commandments, right? But in the context of Exodus, it's not spoken just to Moses and chiseled onto the stone. In this scene, God is speaking to all of Israel. And in fact, in the tradition of Israel, they feel as though like all of Israel of all time is actually present there at the foot of Sinai to receive this revelation, right? So then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. That's prologue, okay? Now the first of the 10 conditions. You shall have no other gods before me. In a treaty, a suzerainty treaty kind of a situation that they had in the ancient Near East, there was an identification in the communication from the conquering hero, god, military person, whoever that might be, of like, okay, here's who's giving you this, okay? And this is, I am the Lord your God, the one who brought you out of the land. It's like, I am your liberator, I am your savior, I am that powerful person, that powerful entity, that powerful entity that did all of that. And it's as though God is saying, I've got a lot of power to save. I have demonstrated that to you already. And I'm going to give you here the keys to accessing how do you get access to that power. Number one, you shall have no other gods before me. Yeah, put me first, no problem, right? And as we know, if you fast forward and you look at what happens in the books of Samuel and Kings, they had problems with putting other gods before. They frequently delved into idolatry, and they went into the religions of the materialistic religion, the Baal religions and such, that kind of like were hedging their bets. It's like, oh, well, maybe we should make this oblation to this god just in case, you know. They were big on hedging their bets, okay? So we know that was one. Okay, remember, the key here in these first four are access to God, okay? I'm a powerful God. Here's your keys to accessing me. You shall have no other gods before me. Number two, see, now we are the ones who do the enumeration, by the way. There's no enumeration in this narrative. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children from the iniquity of parents to the third and fourth generation, to those who reject me, but showing steadfast love to the thousandth generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. Remember, the key we want to remember is God is giving us access, okay? And by saying you shall not make for yourself an idol is a way of saying this is the way that people have thought they had access to God in the past. You don't need that with me. There is no idol. Any idol that you might make, all it does is represent something that I created. You don't need to do that. Yeah. I'm not going to go into all of the thing, but I want you to notice, in that explanation, by showing steadfast love. That's that word chesed that I have referred to frequently. That Hebrew word chesed, which means solidarity, okay? God is promising to be solid with them. And we know that if we don't reciprocate that solidarity, we're taking a risk of the consequences. And we know that bad choices have consequences. Thanks be to God, they don't have all the consequences they could have. Third, you shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses his name. Okay, this is another key, third commandment, of access to God. How do you get access to God? Well, you don't abuse it, okay? This is not a right that gives you permission to use it for magical type things. I am not that magical kind of God. I am not, oh, in the name of Yahweh. No, that's not what God is wanting. Wrongful use is anything that is going to use the Lord's name for manipulation and such, okay? Usually we get this translated how you shall not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, and we think that simply means to expletives that may or may not come out of our mouth. That's not what it's talking about. I'm not saying it's good to do those kind of expletives, but that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about something much bigger, okay? Remember, the key is these things answer, how do I, the person in the people, how do I access the power of this wonderful saving God? Okay, now, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And then there's an explanation. For 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. Access to God comes through worship. Okay, that's what we want to get from this. Our pause in our 7-day week to worship is a way of us accessing. It is one of those key elements, okay? It's an element in our accessing the power of God, okay? That's one of the reasons why we go to church, okay? We want to have access, and we don't get that access just simply by being the Lone Ranger. This is what we're being told. And notice the rationale here is God as creator, okay? This recognizes God as creator, and so in remembering the Sabbath day, it is that pause, okay, that we take in our workaday world. It sets up that principle of being contemplative, of looking inwardly, of actually going into a place where we can then know that, we actually reconnect with that higher power, our creator, and recognize what's creation and what is not. Yeah. A lot of what was going on here, you got to remember in this, that this is speaking out against, is worship of the creation, okay? And that's what the other religions were doing at the time. They put forth the creation as, this is a way of, these commandments are a way of accessing, getting that, your God is the creator of everything. Don't make the mistake of worshiping the creation, okay? Worship the creator, okay? All right, so those are the first 4 ones, and notice they, 2 of them, so three of those first 4 were things you shouldn't do, and 1 is the things that you should do, okay? Now, we have a fulcrum here. We go toward the rest of the commandments, the 6 that follow, are all in the realm of not dealing directly with God, that vertical relationship, but it's the horizontal, okay? Which means with other people. Get this? It starts with honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord God is giving you. Honor your father and your mother. So remember the key is access to the power of God, okay? And part of accessing the power of God is not just by what we don't do, but what we do. I want you to notice, he said doo-doo. Notice that this all shifts on a fulcrum here. We had the 3 negatives and then the positive, okay? And now we have a positive, and then we're going to have 5 negatives, okay? The way it turns is getting us to understand what it is that at the heart of our being that's going to have us actually experience the blessings that this powerful God wants us to have. Honoring your father and mother starts with that, right? That's the positive. The rest of them are going to be on the negative side of saying, because you're going to honor your father and your mother, that means that there are certain things, and if you want to access this God, because you can actually experience it, you can. Notice I said you can. You can access the experience of God through your parents. Maybe not, but there is an aspect of God is there in that parenting, even if that parenting is, if the only thing that was good of it was that you were created by them. Okay, get that? I want that to be clear. Now, you shall not murder. This word here is very specific. It's that word that does not include, putting people to death for certain things. It does not include killings in war. It does quite specifically refer to the taking of another human life out of simple like, it behooves me. It would make my life better if this person were not alive. That kind of thing, okay? You shall not commit adultery. Again, a life of experiencing God has to do with us being faithful to our commitments, okay? And that's what this is about. You shall not steal. Again, that idea of, hey, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and I don't have any right to take what's yours, okay? Now, here's something interesting. The word for steal here in Hebrew is the same word for kidnap. Yeah, and so in that realm, I want us to get that there is inherent in this command to not steal as a command to not kidnap. And how does that apply? Here's how that applies to us. I want us to get that. That applies in the world of slavery, okay? And one of the things, we never see that as there were so many pious people in the church who defended the practice of slavery back in the day. And it never dawned on people that what I'm doing in slavery is I'm stealing somebody. You're stealing their birthright, you're stealing their humanity. Oh, mostly their humanity, but yes, their birthright. You're stealing somebody's freedom. Yeah, that's what happens when we engage in that kind of behavior. So that's something that we want to. When people are saying, "Hey, I really would like to see something in the Bible that specifically says that slavery is wrong," boom, you got it right here. Okay, in this commandment number 8. Okay, next. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. The language here is very juridical, okay? It very much sounds like that kind of thing that you would use in describing testimony in a court, okay? And so when it says bearing false witness, it's, sometimes I think it's just simplified down to lying. We're supposed to always tell the truth, right? But here's the thing. The language here is very juridical, and it is not sanctioning lying at all, but it is something whereby the emphasis on the words coming out of our mouth should not be denigrating toward another person, okay? That kind of thing. Boy, gossip might be included in that, huh? Bearing false witness. Listen to your words, listen to your thoughts, listen to your conversations with other people. Are you bearing false witness? Well, not if I'm talking about the truth. Well, but we've got to be clear about what we're doing. There's a different context. There's a context for actually addressing something that somebody else is doing that's wrong. There's a context for that, right? And there's a context for water cooler talk, of just gabbing talk and gossipy talk, right? There's a difference. We know the difference. All right, 10th commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or male or female slave, or ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. By the way, this little this commandment here that says you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, but it doesn't say anything about your neighbor's husband, right? Gives us a little bit of a clue that this was oriented toward men back in that day, and men who actually were owned things, okay? We want to get that these 10 commandments, even though they are given toward, they have a universal principle of access to God, they also had a very time-bound thing of being toward men, and men who had means, okay? Not unlike, if you think about it, not much unlike the United States Constitution, which was also written from a perspective of men and men having means, okay? That's a whole nother topic. But these 5 prohibitions that started out with the positive thing of honoring father and mother, those are all reflective of the horizontal relationship. The first 4 are the vertical relationship that we have with God. That's how we access God. And now in the final 6, what we get is when you access God, what you're doing is you're making it possible for your interplay amongst other human beings to be on a level surface, whereby everybody can prosper. It makes it possible for everybody to have that freedom in their life and that security in their life that allows them to experience this powerful God. And we don't want to be people who are about taking that from other people. We don't need to take that from. We want everybody to have access to the power of this God. All right, that's the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20. Oh boy, I spent 20 minutes on that. Let's keep going. The Psalm 19 is a lovely psalm. And what it does is it reflects on the power of this revealed law. Remember that word law, we always want to keep it in the realm of understand it as instruction, as teaching, okay? So whenever I say law, I'm always saying, I'm already always saying teaching and such. Psalm 19, we're doing the whole psalm, all 14 verses. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Notice how this is like a praise to God in the realm of creation. Yeah. One day tells its tale to another, and one night imparts knowledge to another. Although they have no words or language, and their voices are not heard, their sound has gone out into all lands, and their message to the ends of the world. Notice how it speaks to the regularity of creation presents it declares the glory of the Creator, okay? In the deep, he has set a pavilion for the sun. This describes creation, right? It comes forth like a bridegroom out of its chamber. It rejoices like a champion to run its course. It goes forth from the uttermost edges of the heavens and runs about to the end of it again. Nothing is hidden from its burning heat. This is a description of what it's like to observe the creation and see what the sun does and the way it apparently moves. It's actually us that's moving, right? But, well, everything's moving. Okay, the law is perfect. So this is where it goes into the teaching of. So this all celebrated the Creator God. Now we get into God's revelation in the law. Okay. The law of the Lord is perfect and revives the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure and gives wisdom to the innocent. Notice how it attributes to the law the same properties as God blowing breath into the nostrils to create the living being, right? The statutes of the Lord are just and rejoice the heart. The commandment of the Lord is clear and gives light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean and endures forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. Remember that context for the 10 Commandments was, this is a powerful saving God. How do we have access to that? And how do we retain access? More to be desired are they than gold, more than much fine gold, sweeter far than honey in the comb. Honey was considered like the ultimate sweet thing that you could ever get. And gold, the most precious thing that you could ever attain. By them also is your servant enlightened, and in keeping them there is great reward. By them, we're still talking about the statutes of the Lord, okay, the teaching. Who can tell how often he offends? Cleanse me from my secret faults. So here the psalm goes from praise of God, praise of the law, to now being aware of, okay, well, what could keep me from experiencing the blessings that God wants me to have through this? Here it is. Those things, unconfessed sin, me putting up blockades, between me and the Lord. Who can tell me how often I offend? Cleanse me from my secret faults. Yeah, see, those ones that we know, the things that are going to get us are the things that we don't admit to. Yeah. Above all, keep your servant from presumptuous sins. Let them not get dominion over me. Then shall I be whole and sound and innocent of a great offense. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Those are the words I start my sermons out with, right? I didn't invent that. Where did I get that from? You know what? The guy who is now the Bishop of Rhode Island, he used to be the dean of our cathedral, downtown Trinity Cathedral, Dean Knisley. And notice that he started his sermons off with that, and I like that. And I see it as a personal prayer, and that's why I start my sermons out with a personal prayer, and a personal prayer that's public in front of everybody. And hopefully that everybody else is praying that same thing. That's the reason why I use the words exactly as they're printed there in verse 14. Okay, now we're moving on. Now, our epistle reading is from 1 Corinthians chapter 1. And here what we are moving toward is this. We are very familiar with how Paul will say things that kind of point to the law, the Mosaic law, as something which leads to death. He's talked about that, and like about the curse of the law and about the condemnation of the law. The only way that humanity could be redeemed was if there was a fulfillment of it in a perfect way. And in Paul's economy, he sees Jesus as fulfilling that. Okay, and so he is going to talk here about how Jesus' death and resurrection is something that fulfills everything that God ever expected from his people, and it gives us and in Jesus it gives us renewed access to all the blessings of God, which is way beyond possessing a certain strip of land in the Middle East. The message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. The idea of death as a gateway to anything good was just totally not anybody's thought at that time, okay? For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discerning I will thwart. And I wish I had looked up, where is he quoting from? I didn't look that up. I apologize. But this is something that he goes on. Look at this. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? In his talking about where's the one who is wise, where's the scribe, he is talking about the popular Greek culture that was very fond of the wisdom philosophers of the day. The scribe, that's the people that were in charge of the religious, of the synagogue, the religion of the synagogue, and Paul's own past as a Jewish person. It's like, where is the debater of this age? That's the superstar of the Greek world back then. Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? Yeah, what he's talking about here is in the cross. That's the foolishness of it. It's like, can you believe it that God would actually use something that is humiliating and unjust to actually justify humanity? Isn't that cosmically ironic? Yeah, exactly. For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, God decided through the foolishness of our proclamation. Yeah. He's that's that word kerygma, which is our preaching, to save those who believe. Saving through belief. This is the same way, this is the same theme that the Old Testament and the Ten Commandments is all about. Believing that we have access to this God and that we attending to these basic instructions does give us access. Well, he's saying that this is what we get through Jesus. For Jews demand signs and Greeks desire wisdom, but we proclaim Christ crucified. The sign of the Jews was that the Messiah couldn't be anybody that has died. Okay, the Greeks desire wisdom. Their thing was in the silver tongue thing. Well, we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews, foolishness to Gentiles, but to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks. And as far as Paul is concerned, everybody is called. It's just some people respond, some people don't. Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. That's what we are proclaiming. But those who are called, we have Christ as we see him and what he did through being willing to die and get to the resurrection on the other side. We actually see the power of God in all of that. That's a wisdom that we could never have fathomed. For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength. All right, let's move on to our gospel now. In our gospel, this is the year of Mark, but Mark is so brief that it is augmented with a lot more John than we get from the other gospel years, the years of Matthew, which is year A, and the years of Luke, which is year C. So here in year B, where we have Mark, we get a lot of John also, because John has things happen that are Mark does and doesn't have, but it's just that it helps fill out the whole. Like, where's John? Well, we get a lot of John in our fourth gospel, or in our second in our gospel. We get a lot of our fourth gospel in our year of the second gospel, which is Mark. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Okay, you want to know what happened right before this? What happened right before this was the wedding at Cana. And if you are familiar with the wedding at Cana, that constituted the first sign, the first, we call it miracle, of Jesus. So in John's chronology, this temple incident is something that happens at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And this is the first of 3 Passovers that are mentioned in the Gospel of John. Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the Synoptic Gospels, he doesn't go to Jerusalem until the very end. What's the truth? Well, it's very possible that he went to Jerusalem multiple times. It's very possible, and in fact, that might be why there was a certain backlash against him. That's why there was a certain receptivity to his arrival, a la Palm Sunday as such. So we want to be aware of the fact that the chronologies in all of our Gospels are streamlined according to the motifs of the author, the writer, and the evangelist. And they are not always, and we don't have all of the truth in any of the Gospels. We don't have all of the historicity of Jesus' life and teachings and his chronology in any one of them. In the temple, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. Why were there people selling cattle, sheep, and doves? The reason why there were people selling cattle, sheep, and doves is because those were the animals that you could use for doing the required sacrifices in the temple. And you had to buy them with something. You could not buy those animals with money, with Roman money. You had to buy them with temple money. And the money changers were there to change that money out so that you could then buy those animals. The doves, of course, were the cheapest thing. They were the thing that the poorer people were. And then the more money you had, you could actually buy, sheep or even cattle, right? He found them doing what? Seated at their tables. They were doing their business, okay? Jesus is going to react to this. And in John's gospel, this is illustrative of an ideal that motivated Jesus throughout his ministry. Watch this. Making a whip of cords. Okay, a whip of cords, this sounds very violent, right? This is what the market manager usually would have a whip of cords, right? Because there's got to be some sort of enforcement. There's a lot of money floating around here, and there could be some bad seeds, so they were it's kind of like an enforcer kind of a role. Jesus takes that role of the manager and he steps beyond that role of the market manager to the role of who he truly is in the economy of God, which is the physical manifestation of the eternal word, right? And so his actions here are in the context of, I'm going way beyond managing this market. I'm going to manage this temple, okay? Good. Look at this. Making a whip of cords, he drove all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. Yeah, both the sheep. Why didn't you mention the doves? Well, they probably flew away, right? Both the sheep and the cattle. Notice it doesn't say anything about the money changers, but maybe they are included. But he said all of them, but both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. So basically what he's doing is he's ending business as usual. The temple had an intention. The intention behind the temple was that it become not an end of itself, but a witness to the powerful God that saved them. And the actions that they were supposed to be taking there were in response to their and their thanksgiving, their thankfulness to this God. And it was supposed to draw people. It was supposed to be a message that was out to the people, say, this is the kind of God. And it had been relegated to a very transactional thing. God wants to have a personal relationship with us. And in this scene, what we get is that the religion of Jesus, the religion of Paul, it had devolved into no longer being a religion of relationship, but a religion of transaction. And that's what he is going against. That's what he's fighting against. He told those who were selling the doves, "Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." Yeah, he's getting back to the intention, right? His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." I think that's from one of the latter prophets. I can't remember which ones. The Jews then said to him, "What sign can you show for us doing this?" Remember, Paul's reading back in 1 Corinthians says the Jews demand a sign, right? And the sign was always determinative, okay? And so consequently, of course they're going to ask for that sign, right? One of the things we got to remember in the Gospel of John is that Jesus is always talking on this level, and the people are listening at this level. And so guess what? Most of the stuff that Jesus says, going right over their heads. Yeah. The Jews said to them, "What sign can you show us for doing this?" Jesus answered them, and he's talking way beyond, "Destroy this temple." He's talking about himself. "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Then the Jews said, "This temple's been under construction for 46 years, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking of the temple of his body. Yeah. What we're getting in here is a teaching that who Jesus is and what Jesus does and the way he fulfills his ministry, it replaces all of that. The temple stuff is gonna get ended in a few years. And so guess what? We don't need to always we need to get back to the past. He's saying we're moving forward. This place is gonna die, even though it's it's great and it's wonderful and everything, but it's gonna die and it's gonna crumble. And we can't just put our eggs in, we just need to get back to the way we were. No, we got to move forward, okay? He was talking about the temple of his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken. Everything in John is an opportunity for us to, we as the readers, we have more insight than the people who actually heard Jesus talking out loud. we are given a clue that the disciples eventually figured it out, but they didn't know it at the time. Yeah. And we are in that privileged position as the reader that, like, we know more than the people, the general people that heard Jesus, and we know more than the disciples themselves, okay? Because they didn't come to believe until, what we want to get in the Gospel of John is we as, the narrator treats us as into a view of God that is not limited by anything. And we can understand, we can see what Jesus is doing, and we're not surprised by those things like the disciples were, or like the people in the temple were. This, my friends, is our third Sunday in Lent. I really enjoyed teaching this, and I gotta do a sermon, and I hope I can come up with a good one for y'all. Until next time, peace.